Hey guys, Thomas Sicily Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Amsterdam. If you end up enjoying this full movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to a petition that will help smaller YouTubers, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, fourth to my Discord server. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated and help support me and the channel. And shilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into Amsterdam. So, I have seen this trailer quite a number of times, quite frankly, and I've also seen that this movie is bombing currently, which I find a little bit fascinating, I suppose. But I never hold the mark of how well a thing is based off of money. I've never done that, and I will never proceed to do that because I don't think saying how much money something made is a good criticism of the property or a thing of itself is. Therefore, the other note before I go into the plot is that apparently this is also based off of true, historical events, or a true story. I looked into it very briefly, and yeah, this is some wild stuff. So here we go, let's get into it. So, it starts off in New York in 1933. So a bit ago, we start with some narration as we follow our lead character named Bert. We have, who is, the guy in the lower right in the corner there. The one on the left is Harold, and the lady up there is, I believe her name is Valerie, if I remember if I put it in my notes correctly. And so we have a little moment where they're like having a little song moment. Two of these three are like veterans of war, and the other is that being Valerie was one that took care of those who were shot, so she was more of a doctor in that regard. All the while, as they're doing the little bit, we see a fourth person enter. This person is named Milton, and they are all proceeding to head over to this autopsy that they are being tasked to complete, with Irma, another woman who's tasked with doing this as well. And we hear her say something about a choice mattering over the needs claim of some sort of dialogue in that refrain. Anyway, so Butch and Harold, or I keep putting Butch in my notes initially, so that's why I did that. So Bert and Harold, head into some restaurant, where they are told to meet a contact, the daughter of the one who is deceased. She is panicking, she believes she's being followed, so she's trying to, get her wits about her. She's starting to spill some information, and we see some individual from the inside of the other building where they're now closer to head outside and push her into an incoming car. The killer, based on positioning, swiftly positions herself around this way, and thus is able to swiftly frame the people that were trying to help her into blaming them into being the killers. This, in turn, causes the police to outright fire at them, and them having to flee from the scene, as I guess things were just wild back then. We then have a flashback of back then when they were back being veterans, or back in the soldier days of 1918, I believe, is the date they give here. And we see them in the army. We see them in the, I think that's the 369 is the number they give for their unit. It seems to be a primarily all-black army, or a unit of an all-black unit. As someone who's done a Providence, Rhode Island reenactment thing on, history thing buff here, I can tell you that this isn't uncommon. I am aware, and I've seen in the historical reenactments of all the black, the full black regiments that were out there, that were serving. It's a pretty cool sight to see, us maintaining this history pretty acutely to, show us that what we have fought for and how far we have come from that point of the, the old war days. All the while, we see that this religious guy come in and start bullying the doctor, which I find hilarious. The god, the religious guy, bullying, saying to the doctor, keep the bullets in the patients. Don't take the bullets out, safely, of course. Leave them in, and, stop the bleeding and, treat people. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't die from bullet poison, like some sort of poisoning from that material staying in their body. But I find that funny that, in that context, a religious person saying to a doctor, don't do the thing that you're hired to do, because that's against God or something. I find that rather fascinating as someone, again, who's been a part of the little history buff in me, and seeing how that reflects on us today, particularly when the whole abortion thing became like a big hot topic, and the God people are all like, but all life matters, and then you have the pro-abortion people being like, but the doctors are saying that that's better for women. It's almost one for one how so much has changed, and yet how nothing has changed in the ways of God. It's so close to one. It almost hurts to see in a movie sometimes, but this is based off of a true story, and I wouldn't be surprised if something like this would have happened back then. So yeah, it is so interesting to see just how similar religion has been withheld, despite its own very, very corrupt past, by the way. So, ain't gonna say religion's ever been perfect, and, that's caused wars on its own, so, I say fuck those religions. Fuck them. Good riddance, I say. Anyway, religion aside, let's get back to the movie. Harold and the doc have a little one-on-one moment here. And they get their flirt on. The doc is Valerie, by the way, just so I'm not confusing my notes here. So they're getting their flirt on after being treated, and Bert kind of cuts in, but the three of them seem to get along as they sing, as they put it, a random song, as they literally put a bunch of random words in a hat and sing them in a, I think they were singing it in French or something. They were singing it in another language, is the point anyway. So they head to Amsterdam. There, they meet with some eye doctors, because Bert has lost his eye, his left eye, and they're getting him a new one. And these eye doctors have more stuff going on with them, because they're like also in a government conspiracy thing, and we learned that pretty early on as well. Then we see a weird montage of this old sand dance that people were doing. It's a little bit of a wonky moment in the movie, but it's relatively short, I suppose. And we get a little dialogue here about how they were in the good part of their lives, and now we're being met with this little montage of things happening. All the while, after this little moment of reprieve, Bert is convinced not to leave quite yet. As we see, he's dealing with his own wife problems back at home, being kicked or being disconfronted by the wife's father in 1919, a year later. So, Bert is continuing to push on the whole veterans, helping other veterans, being one himself. And Harold talks with, I wrote Beatrice, B short for Beatrice. She's like the wife of Bert, just so that's made clear, about wanting to help as well. And then we cut back to present day. So we see that Bert is heading towards Beatrice, and he's like trying to persuade, essentially, this other woman in the thing to get like these files, and all this other stuff is happening. But these two detectives cut into the situation. And after the two detectives, give him some time to deal with this whole killer situation, the killer literally comes out of a car, or not out of the car, but drives while in the car and warns them to essentially just let us metaphorically drive over you in this way, or else. But they aren't having any of it. So, they visit, and head over with Valerie. And Harold and Valerie have a little moment alone. And, this is like some time apart from the flashback, apparently. So Valerie hired them back, the two of them back on, essentially, is what we learn here. And a little mini fight in the household takes out in here, and in the process of it, Bert is knocked out. So, as he wakes up, they're trying to gather more intel onto what's really going on. And in the process, they review this little newsreel, and things take a little, things are not looking good as they're learning more and more about this case and how it's unraveling this bigger mystery that is unfolding before them. So Harold has a little moment with his lady Valerie, and she wants to have a moment with Harold back in this place tomorrow where they would be alone. Meanwhile, we cut to Bert back in his office, where he has a bunch of things piling up on him all at once, including gathering some files, basically. So Harold hangs with Valerie, the one he did the autopsy with, and the detectives stop by to ask for the papers to help potentially clear their name, but those were taken apparently. And in the process, this individual, Valerie, was hurt in the process, and Bert helps with her. And we see Beatrice come in and slap him for some reason. I guess something happened. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what caused that, but anyway, they're trying to dissuade the detectives from making any immediate moves at this point in time, and they are convinced to do so, since Bert is already a veteran, and that is used for a great deal of persuasion. So, Bert and Irma head out, and they go to visit Milton, who's with the other two. This is where we get a little bit of that racial tension that was back then. So remember, this is back in the day, so he claims that he would rather kill 5 white men than 1 white woman, so that is the amount of, privilege he estimates in his eyes would be significantly worse to do that than the other, is essentially what he is saying. And how much it is worse for blacks in this current time frame. Obviously, back then, a lot more racism, a lot more of that going on back in the day. So, this seems to be in line with, again, what you would expect from something of history, is a lot more racism. That is just, the truth of it, and I'm glad that this movie does not hold back on, what reality would have dictated back then. As some people would point out that today has no issues, or rather the truth being is that there are a lot less issues, technically speaking, but that doesn't mean that these things are gone by any means, or any stretch of the imagination, is sort of the contention that seems to be very consistent in the current year. Anywho, so the 3 of them argue now about trying to visit the eye doctor, the one they saw earlier. The 2 of them that they saw earlier, the eye doctors. So Harold and Valerie end up in this unmarked. We learn about what their situation was because they got separated for a bit. Excuse me. They talk about how they were in this unmarked building, and we hear about this whole secret society called the Great Nation Society, or that's what we see, or the Cabal, or I think that's the name they refer to it as, and I think I should have done a little bit more research on that, but I did want to present the review in a timely manner, so I didn't get the chance to do that. Anyways, we learned that these people they want full world power at this point in time. It is like a big deal. So yeah, pretty big stuff is happening. And it's all tied to this case that they all got wrapped up in as well. And they're trying to make their situations better, but, it is unfortunately just getting worse. We also get another racially indicative thing, as he is running, Harold is running with the other 2, and he says out of the 3 of them, he is the most likely to go to jail between the 3 of them, which again, back then, probably would have been significantly truer back then, there would have been more racist cops, there would have been more racist people out in the streets, being outwardly racist back then. That is a thing that you can, you would have seen it back then, though. Is the difference is you probably won't see that happen ever again to that degree. You can even see the little children doing the name calling too in certain instances where the parents persuade their kids to say the bad word to these individuals and even throw things in certain cases. You know, the really bad situations. Anywho, so they get invited back into the house that they were almost kicked out of, and they meet this guy that simply refers to himself as the General. And he mentions that he can only trust them if they sing a little song that he heard before, and they manage to pick it up. That being the random song that they put together earlier on in the movie, I think. Or it might be another song. Regardless. So, we learn that the General is also now being paid to be a mouthpiece, essentially, for these higher-ups, that this group that we are learning more and more about. And our little trio here is saying, listen, you gotta just tell the truth. This shit is getting out of hand. And the General picks the side of our heroes, or the people we are following, I should say, more so. They go hand in hand regardless, but you know what I mean. Anyway. So, we learn more about this community of this short-handed 5 group. And we learn that from the brother, I think his name is Tom, and we learn from him that he wants the General to give his own speech, but code it in such a way that it's more positive than negative. So there's an interest of the exact opposite operation that would also lead to a pretty worse outcome, very likely. Instead of, telling the truth as the truth is currently being described as. We then cut to the gala, where this whole party festivity is being held. We see our trio be joined by the 2 detectives and by the 2 eye crew guys that were, doing their bit earlier in the movie. So now they have all gathered under the banner of the General. All the while, our little team squad here are mingling. They're trying to gather intel to see who's the one, who are the outs, who are the people that are, the ones that want this whole thing to go by the books. Go by the speech that was prepared. Go by the money that was pocketed to this General. It's what they're trying to gather info for. And so we see these 3 influential rich people. And yes, no surprise, they're all white. And they all... I'm a little surprised by this, though. They all downplay the General at first. They say his name, and he keeps saying, no, refer to me as a General. Like, that is my title, please refer to me as such. And they keep downplaying that. Seems to be pretty consistent with modern day, with people who switch their sex to meet with their gender, and them being misnamed. Seems to be pretty consistent, except, the only exception is that this guy his title is the thing, his given title with action is being called into question, not someone's sexuality or gender. Those are 2 separate entities, but the fact that one is being downplayed in history and now one's being downplayed in, again, today, shows me how, again, forward we have moved, and yet we have continually kicked down the can. There was a time where the black people were the oppressed, and then it was the women that were oppressed, and now it's the gay people that are oppressed. We kick the can down to the gays, and now that we kicked the can to trans people, and, it bears repeating that history has a funny way of repeating itself, despite our ability to recognize that that we have done some shit in the past. We find a stupid way to fuck it up. At least a certain number of people do, anyway. So the general does give his intended speech. The speech that he intended to give, not any of the alternatives, his own, in which he tells people that he has been bribed to, essentially get in the pocket of these rich people on either side. And he's like, no, I'm not going to pick either of your sides. I'm going to stick to what this trio wanted, the truth, and that is what I'm going to give the people, the truth. And in the process of this, a gunshot is fired, but the other two were in the vicinity and they happened to stop the gunner in time. And Bert gets processed, but in the process gets shot, but he took something earlier in the movie that made him get all like a thing to invert the pain, I guess is the way I'll put this. And he's sort of out of it for a good chunk of the end of the movie here, where the group is conversing about what has what they're gonna do, and how this Tom character, the brother of Valerie, was again in the pocket of one way, and we learn an even more sinister plot. Again, how far the involvement go, because we learn that there's some Hitler involvement, and I'm not joking, that's in the movie, all the way up to that they literally have a upward shot of their field, and it shows the Nazi symbol cropped into their fields, and it's narrated that you would only have been able to see it that way from a top view. Yeah, turns out that there were some Nazis in this little conspiracy. So that's how deep and bad it was. Whew. We get a little offhand moment where Valerie thinks of shooting him, but it ends up being a fake out. We learned that the little trio we saw earlier, that they faced no charges, because of course the rich people would have not faced charges back then. Of course they wouldn't have. They would have bought out the cops, and that to me is not even a blink of a surprise. All the while, the couple, that being Harold and Valerie, head back to Amsterdam. They're done with America for now. And Bert decides to stay behind. And that is the movie of Amsterdam. And I will say, this movie is bizarrely, when I was Googling the cover for this, I saw it was presented as a historical drama comedy. The second part of it, I don't understand why it's represented as a comedy. I don't think that there are a lot of comedy bits, unless you consider how fucking insane it is that we, as a society, had such an outrageous, conspiracy-esque thing actually happen. The history of itself, it might very well be the ultimate joke. I don't know if that's what the movie is saying, or what that is promoted in the little Google search. I don't know. I mean, it is sort of morbidly funny, I guess, is the best way I can put that. Yeah, I kind of find that morbidly funny, and I think it actually does sort of indicate a sort of sense of humor of when you think about today and today's politics, is how, again, as I briefly mentioned, how much has changed, yet how much remains the same. And again, I think that sums it up perfectly with the concept of the kicking the can down. Again, black people were oppressed, we kicked the can down. Woman, kick the can down. Gay, kick the can down. Trans, and, the can, I don't know if it can go to any other direction at this point. But, you know, a group of people, more so conservatives, tend to want to kick the can backwards for whatever reason. As it is implied in the title of conservative, to conserve the past, you know, I think that is indicative of our little history lesson for today. So I find this movie wildly fascinating. Is it a shame that I've also seen the whole thing of, like, this movie has lost a lot of money, apparently. Which, I don't think it's too surprising to say that that's how much this movie has cost with such a star-studded cast as this. I'm pretty sure all of these actors are in very high demand. So I am not surprised that I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of the budget was that. It's quite a large cast of people, and a lot of them are big celebrities. So, again, not too surprising in that regard. I do think that this is a pretty, pretty interesting movie to watch in that regard of, like, looking at a historical event that took place in history that's so absurd, and yet, you have things like the invasion of the Capitol that happened, you know, not even that long ago. Like, the allotted ridiculousness that has happened in recent history, and seeing how far, again, we have not come, it's truly, you know, I do find the value of why this would be presented as a comedy, is sort of, again, the comedy of how much hasn't changed, is, you know, it's sort of like almost like a Joker thing, almost, like, you know, the whole joke of we live in a society. Well, here, it's a revealing face of we find a way. The United States finds a way, or at least a good chunk of it does, to find a way to slap that clown face right back on, right where we're about to go home for the day. The circus is closed. You know, it's time to walk home and just enjoy your life. No, we plenty of people find a way to slap that clown, get back to work. Get back to the clown, get back to making people laugh at us. That's what we gotta do, apparently. You know, I think that there is sort of a recognition of that with the movie's very attempt to saying it is a comedy. As for the events themselves, I think, again, this is a wildly fascinating movie. I do think that there were, like, one or two moments that were a little bit slow, or, like, a little bit unnecessary, I guess. Like, I think the whole, like, sand dance scene is a little, like, an unnecessary thing, but I guess it's, like, a little fun moment that they were having, so, like, whatever. Again, it's a very short-panned moment, so it's, like, whatever at the end of the day. I would still give this movie an 8 out of 10. I would actually highly recommend people watch this movie. It's, again, wildly fascinating. Yeah, pretty strong movie. And that's my full review of the movie Amsterdam. If you ended up enjoying this full review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, fourth to my Discord server. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated and help support me and the channel. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye!